Somewhere, right now, a baby is staring at your face like it's the most important thing in the universe. It is learning your voice. It is learning your smell. It is forming the earliest version of who it will become. And in 20 years, none of this will exist, not 1 second of it. Why? You were once that baby. You laughed, you cried, you felt fear and comfort and hunger, all before you could say a single word. Somebody held you on the day you were born. You will never remember that moment, not because it wasn't important, because your brain was never designed to keep it. This is called infantile amnesia. Sigmund Freud was the first person to give it a name more than a century ago. He noticed something strange in his patients. Adults could recall almost nothing from before the age of 3 or 4. Freud assumed this was repression, a kind of psychological hiding. He thought the mind was burying something too disturbing to keep, something sexual, something shameful. He built an entire theory of childhood around that idea. He was wrong about the reason, but he was right that something real was happening.
Here's the strange part. Babies are not bad at memory. A 6-month-old can recognize a toy it saw weeks earlier. A toddler can remember exactly where you hid the cookies yesterday and will remind you with great enthusiasm. Their brains form memories constantly, sometimes with startling precision. So the question isn't why babies can't remember. The question is why adults can't remember being babies. Those are two completely different problems. And for the better part of a century, nobody could explain the gap between them. Then researchers started looking closer at how memory actually works, not as one single thing, but as a collection of different systems built at different times for different jobs, like rooms added onto a house one at a time. Think about it like construction. You don't build the roof before you pour the foundation. You don't hang the doors before the walls exist. Your brain follows a similar order. And the part responsible for long-term story-based memory, the kind you use to remember your 10th birthday or your first heartbreak, happens to be one of the last rooms to get built. That part is called the hippocampus. It's a small, curved structure deep in your brain, shaped almost like a seahorse, which is actually where its name comes from. It acts like a filing system. It takes a moment, a flash of sensory information, sound, smell, fear, joy, and stores it as a memory you can pull back up later, sometimes decades later. In infancy, this filing system is still under construction. The shelves exist, the wiring to access them does not. The building is standing, but the lights aren't on yet. Psychologist Patricia Bauer has spent years studying exactly this question at Emory University. Her research shows that very young children absolutely can form memories, but those memories are fragile and short-lived because the brain hasn't finished wiring the long-term storage system that would let those memories survive into adulthood. A toddler might remember a trip to the zoo for a few weeks, then it quietly fades. Not because the memory failed at the moment it formed, but because the infrastructure required to keep it permanently filed away simply isn't finished installing. So when does the wiring finish? It's not a switch that flips overnight, the way a light comes on the instant you hit a button. It's gradual, stretching from around age 2 all the way through age 7, sometimes later. And this exact window happens to overlap with something else enormous happening in your development. You're learning language. You're learning to turn experience into sentences, and language changes everything about how memory works. Researcher Carol Peterson studied children's earliest memories using a method that sounds almost like time travel. She interviewed the same children multiple times across several years, comparing what they remembered as toddlers to what they remembered of those same events years later as older children. The memories that survived into later childhood were almost always the ones tied to language, the ones a child could put into words. often with help from a parent who retold the story enough times that it became part of the family's shared narrative. Remember when we went to the beach and you lost your shoe in the sand? That sentence, repeated at dinner tables and car rides, becomes the scaffolding the memory hangs onto for dear life. Without language to anchor it, even real, vivid, emotional events seem to simply dissolve, as if they were written in water. This is why your absolute earliest memory probably isn't actually a memory at all. It's often a photograph you've seen so many times it feels lived in, or a story your family told so often that your brain quietly built a scene around it and filed it away as if you'd experienced it firsthand. You didn't lie about it. Nobody does, on purpose. Your brain just did what brains are built to do under uncertainty. It filled in the gaps with the most available material it had, and it did so convincingly enough.
There's something else going on, too. Something almost paradoxical. Even after the hippocampus matures enough to start saving long-term memories properly, your brain keeps rapidly producing brand new neurons throughout early childhood, far more than it ever will again later in life, in a process scientists call neurogenesis. New brain cells flood into the memory centers and try to integrate into the wiring that already exists there. That sounds like it should be a good thing. More cells should mean a sharper memory, right? More storage, more capacity. But here's the twist nobody expects. Researcher Paul Franklin, working with mice at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, found almost the opposite effect. Faster neuron growth seemed to actually disrupt older memory circuits, essentially overriding fragile early connections before they ever had the chance to become permanent. When his team artificially boosted neuron growth in young mice, the animals forgot recent memories faster than mice with normal growth rates. The very thing that makes a young brain so spectacularly good at learning new skills, language, faces, movement, walking, problem solving, might be the same exact thing quietly erasing its earliest memories in the process. Growth and memory fighting for the same real estate inside your skull, and growth, for a while, wins. So infantile amnesia isn't a flaw in the system. It isn't your brain failing you, or hiding something from you, or punishing you for some forgotten trauma the way Freud imagined. It's a brain so busy building itself, so busy wiring language, motor control, emotional regulation, and the very foundation of identity at an almost violent speed, that long-term narrative memory simply isn't online yet to keep up with everything else being constructed at the same time. You weren't forgetting your early life as it happened. Your brain hadn't finished building the room where memories like that get filed and kept. And maybe that explains something you felt before without ever quite knowing why. Have you ever tried hard to remember the exact moment you learned to ride a bike, or the first time you managed to tie your own shoelaces without help and come up completely empty, even though you clearly know how to do both right now? Skills stick, procedures stick, stories don't. Not yet, not at that age. Your hands remember things your mind never got the chance to write down.
Even the age at which this fog finally lifts isn't fixed across every person on the planet. Researchers who compared earliest memories across different cultures found something that quietly supports the language theory even further. In cultures where parents talk to children constantly about the past, asking detailed questions, retelling stories, narrating the day out loud, children's earliest memories tend to reach back further and arrive with more vivid detail. In cultures where that kind of detailed verbal replay happens less often, earliest memories tend to start later and feel thinner when they do appear. Your culture, your family's habit of saying, "Remember when?" your parents' instinct to narrate your own life back to you may have quietly shaped exactly how far back your memory now reaches. Memory, it turns out, isn't only built by your biology, it's built by the people around you, talking you into existence, one retold story at a time. This also explains something that feels almost unfair when you first hear it. Twins raised in the exact same household, fed the same stories, shown the same photographs, will sometimes develop different earliest memories of childhood, anchored to different details entirely. One sibling remembers the dog, the other remembers the wallpaper in the kitchen. Neither is wrong. Both brains simply grabbed onto whichever fragment happened to get enough language wrapped around it at exactly the right developmental moment, while everything else around that fragment quietly slipped away into the same fog that swallowed almost everything else from those years. There's a strange comfort hiding inside all of this if you sit with it long enough. Right now, today, your fully developed adult brain is still doing a smaller version of the exact same thing. Most of your days disappear, too, quietly, without ceremony. You don't remember most ordinary Tuesdays from 3 years ago. You don't remember most of last month, if you're honest with yourself. Your brain has never been keeping a perfect, complete record of your life, frame by frame, the way a camera would. It never was built to. It's keeping only the version of your life it decided mattered enough to wire in permanently. Faces that meant something to you. Fear that taught your body a lesson it didn't want to learn twice. Love that changed the shape of who you became afterward.
So the next time you happen to watch a baby staring at you like you are, for that moment, the entire center of its universe, know this: you're not being forgotten by it. You're being absorbed into a structure that's invisible to both of you right now. Wiring that hasn't finished enough to keep this exact moment. Connections being built faster than language can possibly label them. Somewhere inside all of that frantic, beautiful construction, the version of that baby who will exist 20 years from now is already quietly starting to take shape, piece by piece, even if the precise memory of this exact second never survives the building process happening around it. Somewhere, right now, you are still that same baby, just wearing a different body, still learning, still wiring, still forgetting most of what happens to you almost as fast as it happens, every single day, without noticing. And maybe that was never the small tragedy you used to think it was when you first realized you couldn't remember being born. Maybe forgetting all of it, the early years and the ordinary Tuesdays alike, is simply the price your brain quietly pays in exchange for being able to grow at all. So the next time you happen to watch a baby staring at you like you are, for that moment, the entire center of its universe, know this: you're not being forgotten by it. You're being absorbed into a structure that's invisible to both of you right now. Wiring that hasn't finished enough to keep this exact moment. Connections being built faster than language can possibly label them. Somewhere inside all of that frantic, beautiful construction, the version of that baby who will exist 20 years from now is already quietly starting to take shape, piece by piece, even if the precise memory of this exact second never survives the building process happening around it. Somewhere, right now, you are still that same baby, just wearing a different body, still learning, still wiring, still forgetting most of what happens to you almost as fast as it happens, every single day, without noticing. And maybe that was never the small tragedy you used to think it was when you first realized you couldn't remember being born. Maybe forgetting all of it, the early years and the ordinary Tuesdays alike, is simply the price your brain quietly pays in exchange for being able to grow at all.